High Regent Slazther's mandibles clicked in distaste as the Galactic Council's holofloor hummed to life beneath him. He towered over his peers, his segmented exoskeleton shimmering with authority, though the silvery sheen was more ornamental than functional. The chamber buzzed with the usual blend of arrogance, suspicion, and the faintest whiff of desperation. The topic of discussion? Earth. Again. This backwater world, Slazther hissed, has continued to display signs of deliberate insubordination and cultural contamination. They mock protocol, mislabel infrastructure, and have yet to recognize the Council's full jurisdiction over developing species. A few of the delegates clicked their assent or waved tentacles in polite boredom. The Skell ambassador, a mass of bioluminescent goo, jiggled with amusement. They do send the best sitcoms, though. Slazther bristled. This is not about your addiction to their primitive visual entertainments. This is about a facility, recently unearthed on Sector 3C. A classified Earth satellite captured it. Orphanage 42. A misnomer, surely. Intelligence suspects it is a covert military hatchery. Counselor Nax, the reptilian historian from Yaga, raised an eye ridge. You suspect the Terrans are training assassins disguised as orphans? They would, Slazther muttered. Deception is their native tongue. Despite the scoffs, the Council's interest sharpened. Humanity's early entrance into the galactic fold had already disrupted centuries of carefully stacked hierarchies. They'd negotiated trade with a grin, and casually upended interstellar economics with what they referred to as a spicy little spreadsheet. Worse, they laughed during diplomacy. A lot. Slazther jabbed a claw toward a projection. The orphanage. Pictures of giggling children on swings. A man in a cardigan trimming rosebushes. But the Council only saw the calm before carnage. Your proposal? Nax drawled, unimpressed. A precision strike. One ship. A warning. We neutralize the site before the contagion of human subterfuge spreads further. And with that, the vote passed, narrowly. Captain Drox was honored to receive the mission. He was a spindly being of the Verkresh bureaucratic caste, whose species had never physically fought a war, but had filed documentation for thousands. He viewed himself as a rising star in the Peace Enforcement Division. In his spare time, he memorized human idioms. He found them primitive but oddly efficient. The emissary of Righteous Flame, a standard-class orbital purification vessel, shimmered into existence just beyond the pale curve of Earth's horizon. Drox stood aboard the bridge, watching the world spin below him with disinterest. Engage targeting scans, he chirped. His voice was high-pitched, nasal, like a mosquito reading law books. Target acquired, his AI officer responded. Orphanage 42. Coordinates locked. Several dozen juveniles present. One adult. Unusual ratio, Drox muttered. Clearly a command structure. He cleared his throat and opened a broadcast channel. Humans of Earth, he began with bureaucratic gravity. You are harboring illegal training operations for unauthorized juvenile combatants. In accordance with Clause 7 to 16 of Galactic Peacekeeping Resolution 993.5, you are hereby instructed to surrender your command units for purification, or face orbital enforcement. You have 30 seconds to comply. On the surface, John Vance was stirring sugar into chamomile tea. He wore a faded navy cardigan with reinforced elbows, slacks with grass stains on the knees, and a neutral expression that could disarm a minefield. Behind him, a child with a missing front tooth was drawing a spaceship with a smiling sun in the corner. A tiny tone pinged in John's left ear. He sipped. Kids, he said with gentle cheer. Time to head inside. Remember what we practiced. There was no panic. Only the low rustle of small feet obeying practiced routine. The orphanage's quaint wooden doors shut behind them with a soft thump, and the nearby flower bed adjusted subtly, micro-turrets tracking the sky with hidden precision. John walked to his tool shed. It was painted white and smelled faintly of mint. He opened the door. Inside were tools. Not metaphorically, literal tools, but tools that told a story. A shovel that was also a grav rifle. A watering can fitted with an EMP burst core. A trowel shaped exactly like a throwing dagger. He considered the latter, then selected a device disguised as a weed whacker. He flipped a switch, and its hum deepened to something far less agricultural. Overhead, the emissary released a warning shot. A beam of sterilizing heat sheared through a patch of trees, vaporizing a squirrel mid-leap. Birds fled. The air shimmered. John removed his spectacles, wiped them with a cloth, and sent a return signal. "To whom it may concern." His voice came through warm and clear, tinged with polite irritation. "You've trespassed on sovereign Earth soil during a designated nap period. Please remove your vessel from orbit, or I'll be forced to prune." Captain Drox blinked at his monitor. "Prune? Possibly a mistranslation," his comms officer muttered. Drox frowned. "Deploy first detachment. Let's show them we're serious." Moments later, a drop pod screeched down into the Earth's atmosphere like a falling dagger. It landed beside a birdbath with a comically loud thunk, sending up a puff of decorative gravel. The hatch opened. 3 Verkresh soldiers in precision armor stepped out, weapons drawn, and promptly fell over. The ground beneath them had tilted. Just slightly. Just enough. By the time they looked up, John was already moving. He didn't run. He strolled, each step calculated, timed, efficient. His weed whacker growled and spat a pulse that fried the soldiers' visors, rendering them blind. One fired blindly. The blast ricocheted off the reinforced squirrel statue nearby. John had reinforced it last month, and struck their own pod, disabling it. John Vance offered a sympathetic smile. "Shoddy footing. Happens to the best of us." He disarmed one soldier with a casual flick of the wrist, and handed him a teacup. "Chamomile? Helps with disorientation." The soldiers stared in silent panic as John set the weed whacker down, and reached into his pocket for a biscuit. Back in orbit, Captain Drox was beginning to sweat, a difficult task for a species with neither pores nor glands. "We've lost telemetry. The drop team is not responding." He initiated a tactical sweep. From orbit, the orphanage looked unchanged, cheerful, mundane. But several anomalies pinged his sensors. The swing set was emitting shielded signals. The sandbox had an energy signature consistent with short-range teleportation fields. "This is not a nursery," Drox whispered. "This is a death trap." On the ground, John hummed, "Fly me to the moon," as he buried the soldiers' weapons in the compost pile. The children watched from the basement monitors, eyes wide with wonder. "Uncle John, are they bad guys?" John ruffled the boy's hair. "No, Timothy. They're just lost. Misguided. Poor manners, mostly. What if they come back?" "Then," John said, standing and stretching, "we'll make them tea again." A second dropship launched. This time, John was ready. He adjusted a rotary sprinkler that, when tilted at a 43-degree angle, activated a targeted railgun housed beneath the koi pond. The koi, for their part, were entirely unfazed. The dropship exploded before it hit the ground. Captain Drox watched the blip vanish from the tactical map. "I thought this was a diplomatic enforcement." His AI offered no reply. Then the broadcast came again. John Vance. Smiling. "Let's not escalate. You've already made enough of a mess. I propose a compromise. You turn around, file a very formal apology with your nearest galactic liaison, and I'll forget you tried to carpet bomb nap time." Drox's mandibles quivered. Is he threatening us with forgiveness?" "Sir," the AI whispered, "we've run a match on his identity." A pause. John Vance. Codename, Baba Yaga. Previously listed as inactive. Records show involvement in the Scyther collapse, the Parisian coup, and the Heliox uprising. All were resolved without planetary war, but with complete regime change. Single-handedly. The bridge fell silent. Captain Drox looked again at the image. John Vance, cardigan and all, waving to a child holding a teddy bear. "We've made a terrible mistake." Back on Earth, the orphanage returned to its rhythms. Children coloring, reading, playing. John resumed his gardening. A few squirrels cautiously returned to the rebuilt tree line. The warning klaxons were off. The shield dome retracted. One of the children, a red-haired girl with a gap-toothed grin, handed him a picture. It showed him with a flaming sword, standing atop a pile of alien ships. "You're our hero," she said. John smiled. "Let's hope it doesn't come to that." Above, the emissary of righteous flame initiated retreat protocols. Quietly. Thoroughly. No broadcasts. No parting shots. Just a silent departure, filed under Recommended Avoidance Zone, Earth, Orphanage 42. For now. And as the sky returned to blue, John Vance watered his roses. He whistled. And waited. Captain Drox paced the command deck of the emissary of righteous flame, with the twitchy gait of a bureaucrat unaccustomed to improvisation. The latest data fed into the neural array was damning. 2 strike teams neutralized, surveillance drones disabled or jammed, and a minor explosion that had, per analysis, originated from a decorative birdbath. He'd already filed 5 incident reports, and none of them made sense. He paused, glanced at his reflection in the obsidian alloy viewport, and adjusted the insignia on his neck sash. Composure. Always maintain composure, even if your prey turns out to be wielding tactical death rays from a tulip garden. "Open a channel," he said. The communications officer chirped affirmation. A holographic panel blinked into existence, and after a brief shimmer of static, John Vance appeared on screen. He was seated at a small metal table in the orphanage courtyard, sipping tea from a chipped white mug. A biscuit rested on a saucer. A squirrel, possibly a new one, chittered nearby. "Ah," Vance said pleasantly. "I was just wondering if you'd call. The sky's been quiet. Suspiciously polite of you." Drox stiffened. "You have violated numerous interstellar conventions by disabling peacekeeping agents and military equipment." "I didn't disable them," Vance replied. "Gravity did most of the work. I just encouraged it. Though, if I'm being honest, your chaps really need better traction on damp grass." Drox's spines flattened against his skull. "We initiated diplomatic contact. You responded with pruning tools and electronic sabotage. Technically, I responded with tea. You ignored it. Because you cloaked it in a neural disruption signal." "That's Earl Grey," Vance said cheerfully. "Steeps with a little kick." Drox's voice cracked under the strain of enforced professionalism. "You are harboring weapons of a class not registered to planetary defense systems. Do you deny this?" "I deny harboring anything. This is Earth. We don't harbor. We plant, we raise, and when necessary—" He paused to sip. "We trim." Drox muted the feed and turned to his AI. "Is he threatening us again? Or gardening?" The AI, unhelpfully, displayed a shrugging emoticon. "Very well," Drox muttered, unmuting the feed. "You will surrender the facility and yourself for processing. We will guarantee safe relocation for the younglings." John Vance tilted his head, genuinely confused. "Processing? Is this a culinary threat?" Drox blinked. "No." "Oh good. Thought you might be going for barbecue. Little dark, even for bureaucrats." "I am not here to." Drox stopped. Something behind Vance had moved. A blur, a shadow crossing the courtyard far too fast for any child. "What was that?" He snapped. "Security," Vance replied. "The children nap, the toys wake up. Standard Earth protocol." The squirrel squeaked and scampered away. Drox ended the transmission with a jab. "Initiate secondary assault. Deploy the Gemini formation." A full strike cruiser detached from orbit. Its hull shimmered with cloaking matrices and kinetic barriers. From its underbelly, a swarm of drone fighters launched, precision-guided and AI-enhanced. Each drone possessed enough firepower to level a small city, and enough processing to identify a hostile target down to genetic intent. They never made it past the picket fence. The first 3 exploded midair, caught in an anti-aerial net cleverly disguised as a series of hanging laundry lines. Underwear flapped violently, the sonic boom rattling windows as the drones burst like metallic firecrackers. The next wave adjusted trajectories, narrowing in on heat signatures. The flower beds detonated. Explosively blooming rows of daffodils and petunias released shrapnel-infused pollen clouds, harmless to humans, corrosive to alien alloy. Drone after drone dropped into the dirt, twitching like stunned insects before their systems went dark. The remaining units hesitated, circling. Then something rose from the sandbox. It looked like a windmill. A toy. Painted in primary colors. But as it spun, the colors bled into one another, and a low-frequency hum spread out like ripples in a pond. The drone stalled, misfired, lost cohesion. One did a slow loop before embedding itself into the side of a tree. Drox watched the feed disintegrate. He turned, slowly, deliberately. "Is this facility built on a weapons cache?" "No, sir," his tactical officer said, white-faced. "We believe it is the weapons cache." The bridge fell silent. A junior analyst whispered, "Didn't he smile before launching that last defense?" "He always smiles," the AI confirmed. "It's statistically unsettling." On the ground, Vance stood beside a now-empty teacup. He placed it gently on the table, as though manners might dull the sting of everything that followed. He tapped a button on the underside of the table. A sleek pillar emerged from the grass, metallic, humming with restrained violence. It looked like a sundial crossed with a missile silo and a metronome. The top flicked open. A blue light scanned the sky. With 3 rapid pulses, it locked onto the orbiting strike cruiser. A quiet tone played, Beethoven's Für Elise, in minor key, rearranged to sound just slightly sarcastic. Drox watched as his best cruiser lost shields, propulsion, and, ultimately, dignity. Its systems shut down without warning. The lights inside flickered to red, then to nothing. The ship drifted, impotent, and began a slow descent into the Pacific Ocean. He screamed. Back in the orphanage, Vance walked through the halls, checking on each child. Many were asleep. Others played quietly. One was reading a book titled Advanced Thermonuclear Origami for Toddlers. Vance smiled and turned off the hallway alarm with a gentle press. He stepped into the nursery, where a little girl sat with an old stuffed bear and a drawing pad. "Did you scare the monsters again, Uncle John?" she asked. He nodded. "A few of them. Not all." "Will they come back?" "Not if they have any sense. But you know how pride works." She considered that and offered him the bear. "He says thank you." Vance took the bear solemnly. "You're welcome, Mr. Fuzzless." Outside, another pod landed, this one diplomatic. White banners extended, and the words "Non-Hostile Envoy" flashed across its hull in 50 languages, including one known only to quantum dolphins. John waited at the gate, arms crossed. The pod hissed open. A diplomat stepped out. Her skin was translucent, her eyes wide and blinking too often. She had the look of someone forced to clean up after her boss's very public breakdown. "Mr. Vance," she began, "we apologize for the overreach." "That's a generous term for planetary invasion." She winced. "We were misinformed. High Regent Slazther believed the facility housed combat trainees." "It houses children." "Yes. That has become painfully clear. Also, painfully painful. The High Regent is currently filing his own apology report while undergoing treatment for acute stress hives." "Charming. We'd like to propose a ceasefire and diplomatic de-escalation." "Lovely. May I suggest you start with a proper apology and a round of chocolate milk?" The diplomat paused. "You're joking." "I'm American," he said. "We don't joke. We weaponize politeness." She hesitated. "Is that a threat?" Vance smiled. The envoy blinked rapidly. "Very well. Milk it is." They entered the orphanage. She sat on a tiny chair designed for children, and accepted the chocolate milk with both hands. "This is deeply undignified," she muttered. "Good. Dignity starts wars." The conversation shifted. Subtly. With each question, each vague answer, Vance maneuvered her like a rook on a chessboard. She offered terms. He responded with puzzles. She tried to extract concessions. He talked about nap schedules. By the end of the hour, The envoy had signed a peace document that not only absolved Earth of blame, but subtly repositioned it as a protected neutral site. As she left, dazed and chocolate-stained, Vance handed her a thank-you card drawn by a 6-year-old. It showed the envoy shaking hands with a T-Rex labeled Diplomacy. Drox watched from orbit, seething. You're telling me he turned a military counteroffensive into a diplomatic win, using milk? His officer nodded miserably. I want options, Drox growled. Nuclear, temporal, metaphysical, anything. No. The voice didn't come from his crew. It came from his console. Vance appeared again, this time standing in the orphanage garden, surrounded by children holding sparklers and balloons. One had a cardboard box on his head labeled, Galactic Doombot. Captain, Vance said smoothly, I think you've had a long day. Drox snarled. You have no right to access our systems. I have every right, Vance said, tapping a single finger to his temple. You tried to bomb children. So I let myself in. Behind him, the sparklers flared. Fireworks erupted, actual ones this time, not missiles. The sky glittered with color. A banner unfurled across the sky. Happy not getting bombed day. Vance's voice hardened. Just slightly. Enough to freeze Drox mid-breath. You came here thinking humanity was a mess of contradictions. That we're illogical, emotional, reckless. You weren't wrong. But you missed the point. He leaned in. We are the contradiction. Silence. Then Vance straightened, smiled again. I'm going to give you a gift, Captain. It's called restraint. Earth will not retaliate. Earth will not pursue. But Earth remembers. The feed cut. Drox stood motionless for a full minute. Then, slowly, shakily, he said, Recall all ships. But all of them. Back on Earth, John Vance tucked the last child into bed. He turned off the lights, humming a lullaby he half remembered from a forgotten war. The sensors outside pinged once, then fell silent. He walked back into the garden. The stars were out. Somewhere up there, someone was filing reports. Someone else was weeping into their uniform. Entire fleets were adjusting flight paths to avoid a tiny blue planet with a suspiciously high rate of successful underdog stories. John sat on his bench, pulled out a book, flipped it open. The cover read, How to Disappear Politely and Reappear Terrifyingly. He smiled. And the sky, sensing its mistake, did its best to look innocent. The Galactic transmission reached the Empire's core world 17 hours after Captain Drox's defeat. By then, rumors had metastasized across the stars like a mutating virus. Some claimed Earth had unleashed a gravitational weapon disguised as a weather balloon. Others whispered that humans had domesticated quantum anomalies and taught them to fetch. One report simply read, Avoid contact. Species functions on irony and violence. The council reconvened in panic. High Regent Slazther, his exoskeleton dulled by the shame of multiple failures, sat twitching on his throne. The holographic footage now available, courtesy of an intercepted Earthchild livestream, showed clearly how his most advanced units had been dismantled by a man in knitwear wielding a weed whacker. Worse yet, the man had smiled. Slazther slammed his claw down on the table. We have no choice. If this, John Vance, is what passes for civilian on Earth, then humanity is far more dangerous than we imagined. Then perhaps, said Nax, calm and unsettlingly amused, we should stop imagining and start understanding. They turned toward him. The historian leaned forward, claw-tips tapping his data slate. You've treated humanity like an anomaly. But I believe they are something far older. A relic of survival evolution unchecked by galactic norms. They are not post-war. They are pre-peace. They are apex predators, who learn manners. The chamber buzzed. You're saying their civility is a facade? No, Nax replied. I'm saying it's a strategy. Back on Earth, John Vance was kneeling beside a rusting tricycle, tightening a bolt while a 6-year-old explained, with severe authority, how the front wheel was being rebellious. He nodded seriously, fixed the wheel, and sent her off with a pat on the head and a firm, Tell it who's boss. The skies were quiet. No orbital pings. No intrusion alerts. The calm was suspicious. He stepped inside, poured himself a cup of tea, and flicked a small switch beneath the kettle's handle. A concealed panel opened in the living room wall, revealing a chamber lit with a soft red glow. Screens flickered to life, some with star maps, others with personnel files, surveillance grids, and a rotating schematic of the galaxy. Vance stared at the data. Not out of confusion, but habit. He was trained to wait for the second silence. The first was when enemies regrouped. The second was when they decided whether to escalate or vanish. Today's silence was the second kind. He sipped, thoughtful. His calm clicked. Not the friendly internal one tied to his children's classroom tablets, but the deep channel, encoded and tethered to Earth's black site relay stations buried beneath tectonic plates. A voice, casual and dry, came through. "You woke up the Empire. Congratulations." "Didn't even have to yell," Vance replied. "You've got attention. From every major player. Even the peacebound. They're watching now. Let them." This wasn't a defense. It was a demonstration. The voice paused. "You're not worried?" "I'm always worried. That's what makes me polite." He ended the call. A light blinked beside the schematic. Motion detected in Saturn orbit. No ships. Just debris, and one buoy, emitting a signal only humans would decode as an ancient maritime SOS. The kind used by submarines. John's eyes narrowed. He descended to the lower levels. The basement beneath the orphanage was far larger than the building itself. It had corridors of polished steel, storage vaults, armories masked as broom closets, and one room labeled simply, Protocol Echo. Inside, a row of suits hung in perfect silence. Suits built not for protection, but for message delivery. Black plating, subtle kinetic dampeners, adaptive refractives. All outdated by the galaxy's standard. All deeply effective by Earth's. He reached for one and stopped. Then turned instead to the lockers against the far wall. He opened the second from the end. Inside was a slim case containing a wooden chessboard and an old pistol. He took both. When he returned to the main floor, the children were eating lunch. One waved, mouth full of macaroni. He nodded, set the board on the table, and opened a new game against himself. A queen's pawn opening. Aggressive. Obvious. A test. Far above, in the heart of the Empire's intelligence grid, simulations were being run, millions of them. Theories multiplied. Charts were drawn. A section of the galaxy had been flagged. Earth Zone Alpha, Subclass D8. "Do not engage unless provoked," read the new memo. But not everyone followed memos. An independent mercenary fleet, contracted by an Empire fringe-world governor looking to restore his name, arrived in Earth's orbit with stealth modules and hard-coded arrogance. Their hulls bore no markings. Their broadcasts were silent. They mistook quiet for weakness. They entered the atmosphere under the cover of darkness, assuming orbital silence meant ignorance. But Earth was not silent out of ignorance. It was silent because Earth already knew. The moment their ships crossed into Earth's lower thermosphere, every civilian air traffic channel went dead. Microwave towers redirected beams. The ISS, now a covert sensor relay, turned slightly to transmit one last message before entering a dormant spiral. The message was 6 words. "You are 30 seconds too late." Then the sky screamed. John didn't wear armor. He wore his cardigan. He didn't run. He walked to the shed again, opened it, and selected the same weed whacker. But this time, he removed its outer casing. Underneath was a compact emitter wrapped in copper coils and etched with warning symbols in 5 extinct human languages. The first mercenary dropship landed near the playground. He met it before the ramp descended. They didn't announce themselves, which was fine. He wasn't in the mood for introductions. He raised the device, flicked a switch, and sent out a pulse that turned every digital system inside the ship into fried rice. The soldiers stumbled out, dazed and blind. He offered a gentle smile. "You picked a bad day." One lunged. He stepped aside, slid a knee into the man's gut, twisted his weapon away, and tossed another with the emitter's handle. A third fired wildly, the bullet embedded in a steel pole labeled, "Timeout Zone." John caught the rifle midair, flipped it, and ejected the magazine with a flick of the thumb. The last mercenary, clearly fresh, whimpered. "Who are you?" "Gardener." "I don't understand." "That's the point." The next wave didn't come to the orphanage. They hit a decoy site in Nevada. It didn't matter. By then, humanity had already sent its own message. Not through retaliation, but through stories. Every alien media channel suddenly began receiving broadcasts. Not propaganda, children's shows. Clips from Earth featuring John Vance teaching lessons in kindness, in patience, in diplomacy, but always with a background of quiet competence. A subtle display of strength. One alien network aired an Earth documentary titled, "How to Win Wars by Pretending to be Tired." Viewership skyrocketed. Back at the Galactic Council, Nax was fielding questions from hundreds of systems. "What are they doing?" One delegate asked, wide-eyed. "They're playing," he answered. "With who?" Nax gave a slow smile. "With us." That night, Vance sat in his chair beneath the stars. He didn't trust peace. Never had. Peace was what you got just before someone tried again. But what he did trust was reputation. He looked up. Somewhere, some other species was watching. Some young conqueror looking to make a name. Someone wondering if the tales were exaggerated. He hoped so. It made the next time more fun. Behind him, a child leaned out the window. "Uncle John, are you staying up again?" "Just watching the skies, kiddo." "Looking for monsters?" "No," he said, standing, stretching his arms with a satisfied groan. "Just making sure they're looking back." He went inside and locked the door. The sensors blinked once. Then all was quiet. The war never came. Not in the traditional sense. No fleets darkened the skies. No high-intensity planetary sieges. No triumphant invasions. Instead, there was hesitation. A pause. Like the galaxy had collectively inhaled and forgotten how to exhale. John Vance sat on the orphanage porch, one leg crossed over the other, tea cooling beside him. The grass had been cut, the hedges trimmed, and the children were inside practicing arithmetic, using a game that suspiciously resembled tactical war simulations. He wasn't responsible for that. Probably. He watched the stars. They were moving more lately. Ships gliding just outside Earth's orbit, just beyond visible range. They thought their stealth systems made them invisible. They didn't realize John had been tracking them for 3 days with a weather balloon modified by an 8-year-old named Leo. Leo was frighteningly talented. John smiled faintly. Not because he was amused, though he often was, but because it disarmed. Smiles were tools. Polite, universal, and completely misunderstood. The door creaked open behind him. It was Emma, one of the older children, maybe 12, already asking dangerous questions. She was holding a drawing, one of her more accurate ones. It showed John in his sweater standing atop a pile of what appeared to be panicked aliens. In the background, balloons read, "Welcome diplomats." "They're still up there," she said. He nodded. "What do they want?" "Control. Reassurance. Answers. A few probably want to blow something up, but they're not sure who will blow up faster." "Are we safe?" John looked at her, really looked. She had the kind of eyes that cataloged mistakes, measured angles, asked why before how. He sighed. "No," he said. "We're not safe. We're prepared. There's a difference." Emma's shoulders squared, like she understood more than she should. "Are you going to stop them again?" "Not this time. This time, they're coming to me." She handed him the drawing and disappeared back inside. The door closed softly, and for a while there was only wind and starlight. Then the ping came. Low, measured, intentional. He reached for the console beside the bench, flipped open a hidden screen, and saw the invitation. A summit. Galactic Council emergency session. Off-world location. Attendance optional. But the message was coded in a way that made it clear. They weren't asking. They were watching to see if he would come. He tapped a response. A single smiling emoji. And then he stood. 12 hours later, John walked into the grand convocation hall of the Galactic Accord. No escort. No entourage. No weapons visible. He wore the same cardigan, the same gentle expression. Behind him, a lone diplomatic observer drone hovered, quietly capturing everything. The room fell into a silence so complete it felt ritualistic. Every species had sent someone. The Hydra-like minds of the collective fray. The crystalline diplomats of Vrashtel. Even the notoriously neutral Omari had arrived, blinking in synchronous intervals as if synchronizing offense and defense calculations. John nodded politely at each of them. Slazthar was present, seated behind a barrier of legal scrolls and subtle fear. His mandibles twitched when John approached the center of the hall. Nax, of course, looked entertained. The High Speaker, a fluid entity suspended in magnetic light, finally spoke. John Vance. Humanity. You stand here not as a representative of Earth's bureaucracy, but as something else. We are unsure what word best fits. John adjusted his cuffs. That's all right. We've never been fond of labels. You have destabilized protocols, deflected an invasion, resisted military overtures, and now your presence disrupts entire sectors. I haven't done anything, he said calmly. You all did. You came to a world of children, looking for enemies. I simply ensured you didn't mistake kindness for vulnerability. There was a murmur. A flicker of unease. Earth's behavior has been erratic. Your species negotiates through contradictions. Humor concealing threats. Simplicity masking complexity. You appear disorganized but are deeply strategic. We're improvisers, he admitted. That's what happens when you evolve on a death planet. Slazthar rose, claw extended. This is manipulation through uncertainty. They weaponize unpredictability. John turned to face him directly. You tried to incinerate a kindergarten. Slazthar sputtered. It was a misinterpretation of structure and terminology. You misinterpreted swing sets and nap time as strategic assets. They were strategic assets, someone muttered from the crowd. John didn't deny it. The High Speaker floated downward. Your actions have redefined threat assessment models across 12 sectors. We now suspect your species designed civilian installations with dual functions, homes that are bunkers, toys that are traps. We don't design them that way, John said. They become that way. We adapt. It's what we do. You call it paranoia. We call it preparation. A new delegate, silvery and sleek, leaned forward. What are your intentions? John looked around the chamber. His gaze was steady, unflinching. Our intention is survival. We don't want war. We don't want conquest. But we have no intention of ever being colonized, manipulated, or pitted. We are small. But we are not weak. The room held still. You're not afraid, the delegate said. Oh, John replied, his smile deepening just slightly. We're always afraid. That's why we're dangerous. A ripple passed through the council. Some stared. Others turned away. A few, those who had studied humanity more closely, nodded in grim understanding. The High Speaker's tone shifted. Then what do you propose? John reached into his satchel, pulled out a thin black book and held it up. It was titled Diplomacy for When Politeness Fails. He placed it gently on the central podium. We're offering peace. Permanent neutrality. But not submission. Attack Earth again, and you will never understand how deeply we've prepared. Because we've been waiting to be underestimated. Silence returned. Then a slow, deliberate clap. Nax. Others followed, cautiously. Slazthar didn't clap. He simply sat back, his expression unreadable. The session ended without ceremony. John was escorted to a quiet observation room, where a single alien stood waiting. Not a politician, not a general, an analyst. Thin, long-limbed, curious eyes. Why the smile? The analyst asked. John tilted his head. Smiles tell you what words don't. That we see you. That we're playing by rules you don't understand yet. But why not just display your strength? He looked out the window, where stars still shone beyond the artificial gravity shell. Because strength fades. But a reputation? That echoes. When he returned to Earth, the children ran to meet him. He knelt to hug them all, ruffled hair, listened to overlapping stories about macaroni sculptures, and one unfortunate frog dissection incident in the science lab. Emma tugged at his sleeve. Did you win? He considered that. I made them think. Is that winning? It's the only kind that lasts. That night, a new satellite launched from the far side of the moon. Silent, fast, undetectable by most alien sensors. Its job wasn't surveillance. It didn't carry weapons. It carried stories. Stories of Earth. Of kindness and chaos. Of contradiction and calculation. Of a man in a cardigan who could disarm a fleet with a rake and a cup of tea. Each signal was wrapped in layers of warmth and warning. A child's voice, Emma's, narrated the opening message. Hello. We're Earth. We like to play, make friends and learn things. But if you hurt our family... Pause. Our uncle will smile. And then you'll be very, very sorry. Somewhere in the void, a pirate ship intercepted the signal. Upon decoding it, they turned around without speaking. The captain deleted all Earth-related files from their systems and muttered, "Not worth it." On Earth, John stood once again beneath the stars. Alone, but not alone. He'd passed the tests, made the moves, set the traps. He was still human. Which meant he still hoped for peace. But behind the smile, he always planned for war. Because the truth wasn't in the weapons, or the defenses, or even the strategies. The truth was this. The human smile is a loaded weapon. And John Vance always kept his safety off.